That one hurt. There's no other way to say it. This was a brutal, gut-punch ending to a season that a lot of us poured real emotion into, and watching the 49ers get crushed 41-6 by Seattle in the playoffs is the kind of loss that just sits with you. It wasn't just that they lost. It was how it happened, who it happened against, and the fact that the season ended with no real fight left in the fourth quarter. For a fan base that expects to compete deep into January every year, this one felt like getting the rug pulled out from under you. And I know what some people are thinking right now. You go 12-5, you win a playoff game, you deal with injuries all year long, and on paper that's a successful season. And honestly, that part is still true. This team fought through a ridiculous amount of adversity just to get here. But acknowledging that doesn't make this loss any easier to swallow. Losing like this to a division rival in the divisional round, with everything on the line, just leaves a bad taste that doesn't go away overnight. This was supposed to be a game where if the 49ers played clean, disciplined, almost perfect football, they could at least give themselves a chance. Instead, what we got was the opposite. From the opening moments, it felt like the air was sucked out of the room. And once that happened, the game spiraled so fast that it barely felt like a playoff contest by the middle of the second quarter. That's what makes this sting more than a close loss ever could. But here's the thing, and this is important. One game, even a disaster like this, doesn't erase the entire season. It doesn't erase the wins, the resilience, or the fact that this team was still standing when a lot of others weren't. Right now, emotions are raw. Fans are angry, disappointed, and exhausted. That's normal. This is a safe space to talk through all of it, because this is basically a 49ers therapy session. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you something. Does this loss feel worse than some of the other playoff losses we've seen over the years? Or does it just feel different because of how non-competitive it was? I'm genuinely curious where you're at emotionally right now, so drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you've been riding with the channel this season, or even if this is your first time here trying to process what just happened, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. The season might be over, but the conversation is just getting started, and this offseason is going to be a big one. Also, if you're still here with me, tap the like button. It really does help get this video in front of more 49ers fans who are probably feeling the exact same way you are. Because as painful as this ending was, we need to talk about how this game got away from them so fast, and it starts right from the opening kickoff. When you look back at this game honestly, the collapse didn't take 4 quarters. It took minutes, and that's where we need to go next. Reply with C when you're ready for the next chapter. C. If you're trying to pinpoint exactly where this game went off the rails, the frustrating part is that you don't have to look very far. It didn't slowly unravel over 4 quarters. It exploded right from the start. The opening kickoff set the tone in the worst possible way, and from that moment on, the 49ers were chasing a game that was already slipping out of reach. Giving up a kickoff return touchdown to open a playoff game is basically the nightmare scenario, especially on the road, in one of the loudest environments in the league. Before the offense even took the field, it was 7-0, the crowd was losing its mind, and all the pressure immediately shifted to San Francisco. And that's where things snowballed. Instead of settling the game down and answering with points, the Niners moved the ball just enough to give you a little hope, then ran straight into a wall. The 4th and 1 decision early in the game is one of those moments that's going to be debated all offseason. Against a fast, physical, elite Seattle defense, running a slow-developing play to the short side of the field just felt like forcing it. You don't convert, you hand Seattle great field position, and suddenly you've created another uphill climb for your own defense. In a game where you already needed to be nearly perfect, those are the kinds of mistakes you simply cannot make. Then came the turnover, a good throw, a first down pickup, and the ball hits the turf. That's when it really started to feel like this just wasn't the 49ers' night. Special teams touchdown, failed fourth down, turnover. That's 3 massive self-inflicted wounds before the game has even had a chance to breathe. And when you're playing a team like Seattle, you're not surviving that. Not in the playoffs, not on the road, not against a defense that's playing with confidence and speed. By the time Seattle jumped out to a big early lead, the game script was already working against everything the 49ers want to do. The offense was pressing, the defense was constantly defending short fields, and there was no complementary football happening at all. And that's the key point here. This wasn't just the defense getting shredded for 4 quarters. The offense put them in terrible positions over and over again. When the opposing team is starting drives already near midfield or in plus territory, you're asking your defense to be perfect too. And that's not realistic. Look at how Seattle scored in this game. Short fields, efficient drives, one long drive the entire night. Everything else was set up by mistakes. That's how a score gets so lopsided without feeling like the other team was just marching up and down the field at will. The scoreboard looks like a total domination, but the story underneath it is about momentum, field position, and mistakes compounding on each other. Let me ask you this. Which moment made you feel like the game was basically over? Was it the opening kickoff return, the failed fourth down, or the turnover that followed? Drop your answer in the comments, because I think fans are split on which one truly killed any chance of a comeback. And if you're still watching right now, that tells me you care, even after a loss like this. Make sure you're subscribed and hit like on the video. It helps this channel reach more 49ers fans who are trying to make sense of what happened. Because as bad as the execution was, there's another uncomfortable conversation we need to have next about coaching, preparation, and how Seattle seems to have had San Francisco's number when it mattered most. Reply with C when you're ready for the next chapter. Once the emotions settle a bit, this loss forces you to look at something that's uncomfortable but necessary to talk about: coaching, preparation, and execution. Because as much as players are on the field making mistakes, this game also felt like one team was clearly more ready for the moment. Seattle looked fresh, confident, and sharp from the opening kickoff, while the 49ers looked like they were constantly reacting. And that matters, especially in January, especially in a divisional round game on the road. Seattle had every advantage coming into this matchup. They were more rested, they didn't have to travel the way the 49ers did, and they had already shown late in the season that they could limit this offense. When you combine that with a defense that's fast, disciplined, and extremely well coached, you're looking at a bad matchup unless everything goes right. And nothing went right. That's where the preparation gap became obvious. Seattle dictated the pace, the physicality, and the flow of the game, and San Francisco never found a way to flip that script. This is also where the conversation about Kyle Shanahan gets complicated. Kyle Shanahan is a great head coach. He proved that last week. He gives this team a chance to win almost every time they take the field. But he's not immune to criticism, and in this game, he was outcoached. That's just the reality. Mike Macdonald had answers for everything, and over the last 2 games against Seattle, it's hard to argue otherwise. When you go 8 quarters against a division rival without scoring a touchdown, that's not just execution. That's scheme, adjustments, and matchups being won on the other sideline. Turnovers were another huge separator. Losing the turnover battle 3-0 in a playoff game is basically a death sentence. Every mistake fed Seattle's confidence and took a little more belief away from the 49ers. You could feel it. The body language shifted. The urgency turned into pressing, and pressing leads to more mistakes. That's how a competitive team ends up losing by 5 touchdowns without ever really looking like itself. What makes this even tougher to accept is that Seattle didn't need to be perfect to win. They just needed the 49ers to make mistakes, and San Francisco gave them plenty. That's why this game felt over so early. Once you're down big and chasing points against a defense like that, the margin for error disappears completely. And that's not the kind of football the 49ers are built to play. I want to know where you land on this. Do you think this loss was more about Kyle Shanahan being outcoached, Or was it simply the roster and injuries finally catching up to this team? There's no wrong answer here, and I think both sides have valid arguments. Let me know in the comments where you stand. And if you appreciate honest conversations like this, where we're not just yelling hot takes after a loss, make sure you're subscribed and help this channel push toward 1,000 subscribers. The off-season is going to be full of big questions, and we're going to break all of them down together. Also, hit the like button if you're still locked in, because the next part of this conversation is about the roster itself, the injuries, and why this version of the 49ers might have had a ceiling all along. Reply with C when you're ready to move on. C. As hard as it is to admit, this game also exposed something that's been lingering beneath the surface for a while now. This roster, the way it was constructed and the way it limped through the season health-wise, just wasn't built to survive a matchup like this in January. The injuries finally caught up. When you're missing cornerstone players, shuffling lineups every week, and asking backups and rookies to play major roles in the playoffs, eventually the margin disappears. And against a team as complete and disciplined as Seattle, that margin went to zero fast. The offensive line issues stood out again, and at this point, it's not a coincidence. This unit has been exposed in big games against elite competition more than once, and this was another example. Brock Purdy didn't lose this game, but he also never had a fair chance to win it. Constant pressure, limited running lanes, and an inability to sustain drives put the entire offense behind the 8 ball. When you can't protect consistently or control the line of scrimmage, everything else falls apart. Then there's the wide receiver room, and this is where things get uncomfortable. There's effort, there's toughness, but there's no fear factor. Seattle didn't respect the vertical passing game, and why would they? The production just wasn't there. When your wide receivers combine for minimal yardage on double-digit targets, it makes life miserable for the quarterback and way too easy for the defense. Without a true field stretcher, defenses can sit on routes, crowd the middle, and dare you to beat them deep. Defensively, it was rough, but context matters. When your defense is constantly defending short fields and spending extra snaps on the field because the offense can't stay on schedule, even good units break down. Missed tackles, wide-open lanes, and blown assignments show up more often when fatigue sets in. This wasn't a dominant defensive performance by any stretch, but it also wasn't helped by what was happening on the other side of the ball. And that's the frustrating truth. This team fought like hell all season. They squeezed every ounce out of what they had. But with this many injuries, this many flaws, and this little margin for error, winning a Super Bowl was always going to be a long shot. That doesn't mean the season was a failure. It means the ceiling was lower than we wanted to admit. Let me ask you this. What do you think was the biggest flaw on this team this season? The offensive line, the lack of playmakers, or the injuries piling up? Drop your answer in the comments, because that answer really shapes how you look at this offseason. If you're still here, make sure you're subscribed and help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. This is where the off-season conversations really matter, and we're going to cover every angle. Hit the like button too if you appreciate honest breakdowns, even when the truth isn't pretty, because the next part of this conversation is about what comes next, why there's still real reason for optimism, and how the 49ers can turn this pain into fuel going into next season. Reply with C when you're ready for the final chapter. C. Now that the season is officially over, this is where perspective really matters. As ugly as that ending was, it shouldn't erase everything this team accomplished or where they're headed next. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, the future for the 49ers is still bright, but only if they're willing to be honest about what needs to change. This offseason is going to define how serious they are about getting back to the top of the NFC. Health has to be the #1 priority. It's been a problem for too long to ignore. You can't keep losing key players every year and expect different results. That means reevaluating how players are trained, how they recover, how practices are structured, and whether the current approach is actually helping or hurting. Staying healthy might be the biggest upgrade this team can make, and it's not about one player. It's about the entire operation. From a football standpoint, the fixes are clear. The offensive line has to get better. It's not optional anymore. You cannot compete for a Super Bowl with average protection, especially when your biggest competition is built around dominating the trenches. The wide receiver room needs more juice, more speed, and more explosiveness. The defense, with key players expected back, should take a big step forward. But depth still matters. And the good news is that with a more favorable schedule next season, the path should be there if the roster is right. This is also why I'm not panicking about Brock Purdy. He's not the issue. He showed toughness and playmaking ability all season long under difficult circumstances. Give him better protection, more consistent weapons, and a healthier roster around him, and this offense looks very different. The foundation is still there. It just needs reinforcement. I want to hear from you on this one. Do you honestly believe the 49ers can be legitimate Super Bowl contenders next season if they address these issues, or has this loss shaken your confidence? Let me know in the comments, because the fan base is definitely split right now, and if you've stuck with me through this entire breakdown, I really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed, help this channel push toward 1,000 subscribers, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any off-season coverage. This is when smart teams separate themselves. Hit the like button too, because it helps get this conversation in front of more 49ers fans who care just as much as you do.